and welcome to this videocast for subscribers to davidicke.com. Well, David Cameron, the British Prime Minister, may have said this week that there is no David Icke-style conspiracy over efforts to keep Britain in the European Union in the coming referendum. Well, first of all, there is, and you only have to look at what is happening to see the blatant bias and manipulation to create a state of fear that will lead the British people to stay in fear of the consequences of coming out. So there is a conspiracy regarding staying in the European Union. But there is a much bigger global conspiracy within which the European Union is a part, for reasons I've explained in my books and in other videocasts. And the crucial foundation method of pushing the world in the direction this hidden hand wants is on public display with this whole manipulation of the European Union referendum. And by that I mean fear. There's a stablemate of fear in this technique of manipulation, and it's called chaos. You put fear and chaos together, and you create a situation where people become open to A, being protected from what they've been manipulated to fear, and B, in a state of chaos, people are looking for order out of the chaos. And if you can present your order, in other words, your agenda, as a solution to the chaos, then vast numbers of people are going to be open to your solution, which is taking your agenda along the road you want it to go. Now, here's a motto from the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Ordo ab chaos. Order out of chaos. And it's what I've been calling for decades now, the technique of problem, reaction, solution. You create a problem, you tell the public the version of the problem that you want them to believe. You're looking at stage 2 for the people to react with fear, and basically something must be done, do something about it. And then those who've created the problem covertly, got the reaction, do something, then openly offer the solutions to the problems they have themselves created. And we see this with the problem reaction of war, the problem reaction of terrorism, the problem reaction of economic collapse, the problem reaction of viruses, the latest virus scare that comes out, and we see the solutions to the problems and the reactions which are pushing this agenda on that I've been exposing now for a quarter of a century. And all this comes together in current events with the migrant crisis. We are seeing every day horrific pictures of families and children who are fleeing war zones created by the very European Union, United States coalition, the countries of the so-called West in general, who have targeted country after country in the Middle East, created mayhem, fear, chaos, and the result of that chaos has been vast numbers of people heading out to Europe, crossing the sea in very, very dangerous conditions, and then walking through Europe. And at the moment, because of the border effectively being closed to all but a few between Greece and Macedonian border, we're seeing a massive backlog of people in Greece. And the pictures are tragic. But as I'm going to explain, there are other facets to this that are part of this bigger conspiracy. It's kind of ironic that Greece, the so-called birthplace of democracy, is being devastated by a combination of EU and other externally instigated economic crises which have brought that country and its people to their knees. And now that is being compounded by this enormous number of migrants who are trying to get into Europe through Greece and are now being held back at the Macedonian border. We've already seen the incredible numbers of migrants who have entered Europe, gone into countries like Germany, and of course the camps in France at Calais, etc., of people who want to make the step into Britain. And what we see is heartbreaking when you see these families and these children. But there is, like I say, a much bigger picture to this. If you ever see something in black and white, then you've got a skewed view of it, because it very rarely is. The truth is almost always found in the shades of grey. And what we have here is not a black and white situation with this migration crisis. In there, you have genuine people who are fleeing wars and tyranny, most of which, almost all of which, are being created by the very Western countries that they are seeking to head into, and the West in general. Countries like Britain, France, the United States, of course, always involved, and Germany's in there in the background as well. And so we see these genuine migrants, and absolutely these refugees of war and tyranny should be absorbed into European communities. They should be given help, not least because the West in general is the cause of their problem, the genuine refugees. But what we also have among this vast movement of people are others who are not fleeing tyranny and not fleeing war. They are taking the opportunity to jump on that flow of people, and for their own reasons. Now, first of all, that is making it far more difficult for the genuine people by adding to the sheer numbers. And some of these people are not very nice. And, well, that's racist. No, it's not. You give me any group of people, large group of people, I don't care if they are black, brown, white, sky blue, pink. There will be genuine people in there. There will be nice people in there. There will be people who in need of help in there. And there will be arseholes in there. It's the same the world over, no matter what culture, what country, what race you're talking about. But what we see is this black and white polarity that has developed, where you've got people on the what would be called the far right who are basically saying, keep them all out. Keep them all out. People in desperate need because of what Western countries have done to their country. What kind of compassion is that? What kind of humanity is that? Don't be silly. And then you've got on the other polarity, on the left of politics, people basically saying, let them all in, which is just as bloody stupid because of the consequences for everybody of that. You know, in Britain alone, there are people already here, black, white, all shades of colour and race, who are in desperate need because of austerity programs and so on, who are struggling, who are homeless. And you can't just say, let everybody in. And what about the effect on them? And what about the effect of people coming in who also will, many of them will end up in the same way? This has to be seen from a bigger picture point of view, and it has to be dealt with from that knowledge. First of all, if you're going to sort out the migrant crisis, you have to first of all stop this systematic war in the Middle East. Because as I've explained in the books and in recent videocasts, there is a list of countries which they've been ticking off since 9/11, Iraq, Libya, Syria, etc. And these have wars of acquisition, because that's what they are, and devastation, have caused such incredible upheaval in those countries that Iraqis and Syrians and Libyans are now trying to head for Europe. And if you don't stop the cause, you're not going to stop the flow of people seeking to escape what you have caused. So there's number one. That has to be sorted out. And we've got to go beyond this black and white idea that you let everybody in no matter what, instead of letting in genuine people in genuine need of help and looking differently to those who are simply piggybacking that for their own ends. Because there is a much bigger picture here, like I keep saying. The plan, and this locks into the European Union and Cameron with his referendum. The plan is to break up Europe into regions ruled by dark suit bureaucrats in Brussels. No countries, that's the plan. Break them up, end sovereign nations, and break them up into regions ruled from the centre in Brussels. Now, there is obviously going to be a terrific resistance to that from people who value their country, value their nation, value their sense of culture. And I quote in my new book, Phantom Self, an insider who said in 1969 that it is much easier to break up nations when you fill those nations, I'm paraphrasing here, when you fill those nations with people from a different culture, than it is if you try to do it with people who are from that culture, from that nation. And so, this insider said, 1969, they were going to instigate massive immigration between cultures to break down the sense of nationhood, in effect, the sense of culture, so that those countries could be broken up and taken over by a much greater supranational force, i.e., in this case, the European Union. And that's what we're seeing. I heard an interview this week with a very genuine person of what you would call the left, talking about the migrant crisis and talking about the German Chancellor Merkel in almost terms that she was a heroine for what she's done in opening Germany's doors without question to anyone that basically wants to come in. And this is so indicative of how the left in politics has lost the plot by not understanding what the plot is. Chancellor Merkel is a 100% owned pawn of this hidden hand that I talk about. And thus, when she does something, it's because the hidden hand has demanded it. And if you look at what I'm talking about here, the breakdown of a sense of culture, one of the countries in Europe that has the greatest sense of culture, the greatest sense of itself, is Germany. And so Germany has been targeted up to this point more than any other country with this migrant agenda. And so what you have, again, taking away the black and white, you have these migrants, great numbers of which are absolutely genuine and should be allowed in and should be helped, not least because we caused the problem. I say we, the West. And you've got this other enormous number of migrants who have piggybacked those genuine people to get in for their own reasons. And they and the indigenous population that has been affected by this have been played off against each other by the same hands holding the same strings. Because what they want is a breakdown of the sense of culture to dilute opposition to breaking up Europe into regions and ending nations and ending countries. And they want conflict and they want upheaval between the migrants and at least some of the indigenous population. Because that creates, here we go, fear and chaos. And out of fear and chaos, they can offer their solutions to end fear and chaos, which actually lead to more fear and chaos. That's the way it works. And so if you want to introduce a police state, if you want to introduce more and more surveillance, more and more control, then you want upheaval, you want violence, you want conflict, because that's a problem to which you can offer your solution, which is more and more police state. They've done it with terrorism quite blatantly by saying we must take your freedoms away to protect your freedoms. And over the last week, there has been the text, the contents of a new book by a guy called Tom Bauer, an investigative journalist, that's been serialized in a British newspaper. And it's about Tony Blair. And I'm going to talk quite a bit about Tony Blair today, because Tony Blair personifies everything that is wrong with British and global politics. And he also personifies the frontman for this global agenda orchestrated from the hidden, from the shadows, by people we never see. The book reveals the background in detail, after talking to civil servants and ministers and politicians, etc., and insiders around Blair in his years as British Prime Minister. And it reveals the background to the invasion of Iraq, which was completely manipulated to find an excuse, weapons of mass destruction, to justify to the public an invasion of Iraq. Problem, weapons of mass destruction, or the suggestion of it, the claim of it. Solution, invade Iraq, get rid of Saddam. It talks about the way, the book talks about the way that the invasion of Afghanistan was manipulated by Blair and a tiny few people around him, excluding even the cabinet of his own government. And it also talks about how Blair and his Home Secretaries in the period of the Blair government systematically and very consciously opened the doors to mass immigration because they wanted to, in the words of one insider, they wanted to change the face of Britain forever, irreversibly, by mass immigration of other cultures. Now, what I'm saying here is not whether that's right or whether that's wrong in terms of what they call the multicultural society. That's not the point of what this videocast is about. I'm not saying anything regarding immigration in and of itself at all. What I'm pointing out is that mass immigration into Britain under the Blair government was done on purpose for a specific end. Did they do it because they cared about the immigrants coming in? No, they couldn't give a damn. They did it to change the face of Britain irreversibly forever. Because Blair is a front man for this hidden hand. That's why he's done all that he's done. And I'll go into that as we go through the videocast. And what we're seeing now is a much expanded European version of the same technique. And right, left, center, whatever people call themselves, need to stop fighting each other and arguing with each other. And all parties, left, right, center, migrant, European population, need to turn their eyes on what is really happening. And that is that the migrants and the European population are both being used as pawns in a game that has massive implications for everybody. A game, an agenda that is designed to restructure Europe in its entirety and put it under the total control of a fascist communist, both the same if you are living under it, European Union. And that, again, should be in the minds of anyone when they come to vote in this EU referendum over whether Britain stays in or comes out. Because, as I keep emphasizing, we are seeing a process here. We are seeing an unfolding agenda. If you think it's bad now, strap in, because they've hardly started. And if we go on seeing the world and events like the migrant crisis in purely black and white terms, without seeing its context in the greater scheme of manipulation, then we'll go on fighting each other and arguing with each other while the holders of the strings go on taking the world where they've long planned to take it.